All right, I'm so glad to have you on. Welcome to the new format. Is this something? I'm excited to do this with you, and I'm going to do this periodically. I'm not going to do. I can't say I'm going to do it every day at 6 o'clock, but I can tell you that tomorrow at 6:30 we'll have John Ward, Dr. John Ward, on to sort of finish the discussion on the referendum, the Bay County School Board referendum to raise the millage rate 1 full point for 4 years. And joining me in just a moment is going to be Bill Husfelt, the superintendent of schools. We've got a long history, by the way. When I used to do the radio show here, gosh, for a dozen years, we've been on, we've done this, and we usually don't agree. And I don't think we do on this one either. Superintendent Husfelt is able to explain the referendum and what the additional taxes would go to. He is unable by law to advocate for it. And so this won't be a debate as much as let's get as much information as we can. I'll tell you up front, I'm opposed to it. I'm opposed to pretty much all taxes. The first reason, by the way, that I oppose it is because I don't trust local government. That's why, number one. But the second reason that I oppose it, I think property taxes are already too high. So I want you to know up front, I oppose it. I also want you to know up front that Superintendent Husfelt and I get along well, and I'm grateful to have him on. And I would really like to get back to the time where just because we disagreed didn't mean that we can't have a conversation. But as far as making the case against it, that'll come tomorrow. Dr. John Ward is very against it, and he's done a lot of research. And so we'll have him on then. But right now, why don't we bring on Superintendent Bill Husfelt. Bill, how are you? Can you hear me?
I'm good. I hear you fine, Bernie. Thank you for letting me have this time just to share.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. So I'll tell you this before we get started. Boy, you and I catch a lot of heat for being in the political realm, and I made the mistake of doing this yesterday, Bill. I asked this question to Alexa, and listen what happened.
Alexa, what is the horoscope for a Leo?
Yesterday's tensions rise a couple of notches today, leaving you with steam coming out of your ears. It's a tense, bad-tempered day in which you vie with others to take the moral high ground and feel superior. Do yourself a favor and avoid conversations that center around religion or politics because these are almost guaranteed to stir up trouble and get everyone hot under the collar.
Oops.
Oops.
Did you know I'm a Leo also?
Oh, that explains a lot. No, I did not know that. All right, so let's get started. I'll call you Bill, so it's not awkward. All right. So what are the most important points that people need to know with the election? The voters will decide on this on the 20th, right?
Right, that's correct. And I think that's the most important thing is the voters get to decide.
Right. So the school board voted to put it on. They could have not voted to put it on, but they voted to put it on and said, let the voters decide. So ultimately, it's going to be up to the voters. What percentage of the voters has to say yes on this for it to pass?
It's just a majority. It's just one more than says no.
All right. And what would be the benefits to this?
Our employees would benefit greatly. I mean, they've been behind the 8 ball since before the recession, and that's the main reason we're doing it. There's no ulterior motive. And Bernie, you probably are more astute than most reporters about budgeting and millage and property values. Counties and cities in the state of Florida, they have so much more flexibility in what they can set their millage rates at, and then they can do pretty much what they want with their funding. It's not the same way with school districts. School districts are, and what we talk about is buckets or whatever. Our funding comes to us very specific uses, and we're limited what we can do. And the ESSER money, the CARES Act money, CARES 1, CARES 2, we don't know what we're getting CARES 3. All that funding is great and wonderful to do a lot of good things, but none of it can be used for raises. So School boards have very little discretionary funding. And this is the only method school boards in the state of Florida have to add to their general discretionary funding. It's it. There's no other method. There's no other thing to vote on or anything like that.
So this would give a raise to not only the teachers, but also to all the employees of the school district. Is that right?
Yes, and we've estimated that a 1 mil, as you said, would raise $18.3 million. It 20% of that comes right off the top and goes to charter schools because they have about 20% of the student population. So the funding follows the students, which is the way it should be, and it's the way it is in almost all of our funding now. And what I've publicly said is that I would go to the board and say, if it passed, that I would recommend $10 million be directed to salaries for all employees. Now, there's something people need to understand, and I think I've said enough people understand it by now. This would not impact my salary either way. It would not impact the salaries of the school board members. Those salaries are set by statute. It takes $1.4 million for a 1% raise for all of our employees. 1.4 million is a 1% raise. And that's basically it. And I know you've got a lot of smart people that can calculate that, but that's where it comes from.
Well, we're in a weird situation here because you are not by law allowed to advocate for this. So if I were to tell you, but Superintendent Husfelt, commodity prices have shot up over the last year, and so many people have lost their business and their jobs because of the COVID and everything. I could tell you that, and all you could say is, well, I agree with you, Burnie, but all I can tell you is what this does. You can't advocate for it. But I'll say this because I feel like I need to say this way, and it's not really for a response again because you're not able to do that right here, right now. But when I hear any government bill say that it will raise 18.3 million, because we would agree it's a tax.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
So anytime I hear any government, local, state, or federal say it'll raise 18.3 million, my first thought is, for who? It's not going to raise 18.3 million on the family table, on the family budget. It's actually going to suck $18.3 million that could have been earned and invested and put it in the hands of government that will award it to people. And in this case, to the workers. And I think all of us, or most of us, want the teachers, to be taken care of and to have good salaries. But I think that's a big.
And Burnie, let me just interject.
$3 million coming out of the local.
You said this earlier. It's not just teachers, and I just want to, because we have 2 unions we deal with, and a lot of other personnel. I mean, we have support personnel from bus aides to cafeteria janitors to all kinds of support personnel out there, bus drivers, everything. And so this is about all employees, as you said earlier.
So, okay. So the first big reason or benefit to vote yes on this, I'm voting no, but the first reason to vote yes on this is because it will give a raise to all the employees at Bay District schools. Are there other reasons that people should vote for this?
Right. There are 3 other parts to this, Burnie, and the other 3 parts are mental health and wellness of our students. Currently, we have a very big federal grant that we got about a year after the hurricane, because I think all of us know the chaos that families and everybody were dealing with. Burnie, I can't see you. There's the ballots.
What I did, Bill, I just put up the actual referendum, but we can hear you, and we'll get back to our to us. But we can hear you if you'll keep going. I'm just showing them.
All right, good, good. And then the mental health and wellness, there's about $1.2 million we would put to that when that federal funding runs out. Also, because the state right now, we're spending $4 million plus more than what the state funds us for mental health and wellness. Also, with safety and security, all the requirements, we have to have armed police security in every school, at all our functions, and we spend about $1.3 million more than the state funds us for that. And then full-time pre-K is the other program that the board agreed to was important. One of the biggest challenges we have are those students, and it's going to be worse now after the pandemic, that have no skills when they come to kindergarten. What I mean by that is they don't know the colors, they can't spell their name, they don't know any of the alphabet, they can't count to 10, and then they lack a lot of social skills. So one of the things that we know, the research shows us, and we know that if students do better in kindergarten, they're going to do better in first grade, second grade, and be able to read on grade level in third grade. So we want to encourage parents to send their kids to pre-K. Now, pre-K, the state funds 3 hours of pre-K currently. That's all they get. But they do not fund beyond that. Parents have to pay that for them to stay in a full day pre-K. And what we want to do is support that where those parents that can't afford that, where those kids can be in a full day pre-K and hopefully pull our reading scores up. That's what the overall goal is. Those are the four main parts. You said salary first and then those three. And I've heard people fuss, well, it says in other programs at the end. Well, the reason that is because not all, for example, not all charter schools have pre-K programs. So obviously they couldn't spend it on a pre-K program. So they wanted to build flexibility in there so they could do what they wanted with that funding as long as it was student driven. So, I mean, that's why the lawyers put that language in there.
Here's a question. Does the school board vote to approve exactly how the dollars are spent if the referendum passes?
Yes. Yes, they're told, the school board's totally in charge of budgeting. That's what they do. They have two main responsibilities. That's budgeting and policy.
All right.
We can't do anything with that until the school board would approve it.
Right. And again, the election I call it election, but for this, the voters will decide on this on the 20th of this month, April 20th. And it's a 1 millage point increase on property owners for 4 years. Two questions, Superintendent Husfelt, two questions. Number one, which property owners, if any, are exempt from this?
The only ones that would be exempt, the only exemptions that I'm aware of, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if it's wrong. The only exemptions I'm aware of is if your property value is less than what you would have to pay taxes on. So if you had $100,000 piece of property, it'd be $100 a year. If you had $50,000 piece of property, it'd be $50 a year. So if you have a $50,000 piece of property, but you're homesteading and you have a $50,000 exemption, I guess you wouldn't pay anything on it.
Do you know if businesses are paying on this, or is this only for
everybody that I'm aware of? Burnie, no one would be exempt on this. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, but there would not be any exemptions on that.
Okay, and then I had another. Oh, okay. Here's another thing that I've just started looking into this bill. Really, I've been focused getting this thing up and running, and on other areas of local government. I like
the split screen, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, when you get serious, Bill, I'm gonna put you just like that. See, now you got it all.
Don't do that. They don't want to see me to begin with. You certainly don't want a close up of it.
So here's one of the big concerns. It seems very legitimate to me. If it's a 4-year tax increase, right? So now we've got all the employees of Bay District schools get a raise. When it goes away, what happens? I mean, isn't that going to be a, well, we got to have it now situation? It seems like the 4 years is a forever tax.
And I'm going to be very candid with you. It should be if the school board does what they say they're going to do with the funding. And that's why the check is there. That's one of the check and balance things. There will be an oversight committee to make sure they took the money and did what they said they were going to do with it. Now, here's the other thing. There are 21 other school districts in the state of Florida, Burnie, that do this right now, including Walton County. Do you know how much Walton County generates off of their operational millage? They generate over $11 million off their operational millage. I mean, they currently do that. And so, yes, it is something that would have to be there, but then the school board and the board members and the superintendent, whoever it is at the time, would have to make sure they convince the voters, look, you gave us this, you offered this opportunity to us, here's what we did with it, here's the Citizens Oversight Committee, we'll show you the books, records, how we spent it, and we need you to continue to do this. And look, Burnie, I wish there was a half cent that we could have begged for and said, look, I know you already have one, but this is different. It can't be used the same way as the other. I wish there was another option. There's actually no other option in the state of Florida that we have. We don't have any kind of millage that the school board has access to for the general operations. And we've got all kinds of federal dollars now, but those federal dollars are for hurricane recovery and for the pandemic recovery that we've all got to go through.
Yeah, and this was another thing that's been brought to my attention. My understanding is when the school board, and I was at the school board meeting when they voted to put this on the ballot for the voters to decide on April 20th. At that time, we didn't know about, I don't know if you all knew about it, but we didn't know about the Federal Funding Act that'll bring in $25 million, the CRSSA Act, and then the American Rescue Plan that'll bring in $56 million. So are you saying that that money coming in cannot be used for what you want to use the $1 million tax increase for?
Right, Bernie. There's it's really called the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Education Relief Act. It's part of the CARES Act, and there was the first one that was done under President Trump. We got $7 million for. That went to open schools. It went to hire extra custodians. It went to buy a mask. It went to buy hand sanitizer. It went to pay someone to sanitize the school buses. You know, when we were all trying to figure out how to safely open schools and do what we had to do. And then under President Biden, they did the ESSER 2, which was $25 million. Or maybe it might have been President Trump. I can't remember who the second CARES Act was. Then we got $25 million. Now, remember, of that money, 20% goes to the charter schools. But those funds can't be used for pay raises. They have to be used for our recovery and battling the COVID. We're going to spend an extensive amount of money on this for summer school for this year and next year. We've already got extended school that we're paying for right now and will be for the next 2 years. So many students were behind. Now, I'm going to be very candid with you, Bernie. We're going to have so many federal dollars that we're going to have to spend it on things like air conditioning and HVAC systems. That's what they put in this act. And I can't remember if that's part of what I emailed you because you wanted some information. But yeah, we've got a letter from Commissioner Corcoran in Tallahassee, the Commissioner of Education, and we've got a letter from the Speaker of the House that basically says, do not spend this on recurring funds. You must spend it on things that deal directly with COVID and HVAC systems and things like that you can say are tied directly to the health and well-being of your students and people in your schools. So, I mean, I'll share all those letters and memos. I think we've sent those out to everybody that's asked for them. But that's what we're being told. It can't be used for raises.
Yeah, and here's the frustrating thing. It's just the clunkiness of government, you know, and it's the reason government's so expensive, you know. So the way it's set up again is you have a pot of money here and a pot of money here, and this money can only be spent to say construction. This money can only be spent, say, for salaries, and you can't, you know, like anybody else, you can't be nimble with the money. So it's very hard for taxpayers to see all these big pots of money. And, you know, I wonder if there's any way, Bill, I wonder if there's any way that the county or the state could change that to give you more flexibility. Maybe that's what needs to be done.
The county can't. The county has no authority to do that, but the state could do that. I mean, the state could easily. Bernie, here's the frustrating thing that we deal with. After the hurricane, we're all scrambling trying to figure out what to do. We generate approximately $24 million on a half-cent sales tax right now. That money can't be used to pay any salaries, none at all, none. And so even after Category 5 hurricane hit us, we can't touch that for any of the other emergency needs we've got, none. In fact, one of the things, and I know this was a big hullabaloo when it came out, the auditor wrote us up because we used some of that money to rent portables to put the kids in while we repaired the schools. Now, how can we repair the schools unless we put the kids in the portables? And that's the frustrating thing about having our hands tied on funding. I've got $80 million of insurance money that we can't do anything with but repair our facilities with. We can't use it for pay raises. We can't use it for salaries of employees. It has to be used to repair the destruction of the hurricane. That's why our money comes to us in buckets. It doesn't make any difference if I don't need new textbooks. I have to spend it on textbooks. It's very siloed. We call it buckets or silos.
Yeah. And, this is more philosophical, Bill, but I want to say it because I want people to consider it. And it's sort of relevant to this conversation, but not entirely. So this is something that I learned it from Milton Friedman, and I've talked about it for about a decade. But this is why government cannot operate like a business. This is why government cannot be smart with money, because there are only 4 ways that you can spend money. Number 1, you can spend your own dollars on yourself. And if you do that, you care a whole lot about the price and the quality. It's your money, it's your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. The second way that you can spend money is you can spend your own money on somebody else, like a gift. And if you do that, you care a lot about the price, but not as much about the quality. It's not your stuff. Mm-hmm. The third way that you can spend money is you can spend somebody else's money on you, like an expense account, like when I was in the Air Force. And I'd find myself in a nice restaurant, Bill, eating the best steaks because I cared about the quality, but the cost didn't matter to me. There's a fourth way and a final way that you can spend money. You can spend somebody else's money on somebody else. And when you do that, there's no natural constraint for price or for good quality. And that's what government does by its very nature. And so it's hard, and I know you can't advocate for this, but it's hard for people who have been hurt so much this year to think that any more money should go into government that already has some pots full and some pots not so full. I know you can understand that. I really said
Burnie,
that.
I get it. I mean, Milton Friedman was very smart, obviously, and if more politicians would pay attention to those kind of economics, we'd all be smarter. But I did not ask for Washington, D.C. to send me $26 million to spend on what they think we need. They don't ask us what we need. They don't ask us how we should spend it. They just send directions to us and tell us what we've got to do. And the irony of things like this is that somebody, and I'm not getting into who, somebody reached out to us today and said, look, we've got some money left over from a federal grant. Do you want to use it? I mean, that's the world we live in, Burnie. And it just blows my mind when these kind of things happen. And they're printing money crazy in Tallahassee right now, but I mean, in Washington right now.
Yeah.
But Burnie, the bottom line is this. And look, I know people hate taxes. I do. I get it. But our employees have always been there when we needed them. They came back to work immediately after the hurricane. Within 4 weeks, they were back working, doing everything we asked them to do. They started school. We started in August. We are still getting calls. My assistant gets probably 2 or 3 calls a day from a company, different companies, wanting to help us reopen schools. When they find out we've been open since August, it just blows their mind. Our employees have been like this and continue to do this, and they do an amazing job with all the challenges we got. I'm giving this information out for them because I told them I would. They asked me if I would. I said, look, I realize we don't have any other options. I will bring it to the school board and discuss it with them, and this is how we got where we are.
Yeah. Here's a question I got for today, Bill. I'm wondering what you would think about this. In the last several years, real estate prices have skyrocketed in Bay County. Meanwhile, St. Joe is developing a large active retirement center in Bay County, which will lead to more property tax revenue from citizens without children in Bay District schools. So there's going to be a lot of people contributing that revenue stream that don't even have kids. Why isn't that increase to the school's revenue? Why isn't that enough?
Well, Burnie, one thing is that we don't know when that's going to start or how it's going to start. And see, I want to come back to your earlier question. I mean, and look, I'm not going to be superintendent when it comes back up for a referendum. But what I would do if I was superintendent on the board, I'd say, look, how much does the millage have to be to get the same amount now, so that they could back the millage up? And we've done that since I've been on the school board. We've saved $50 to $100 million on other millage things that we had control over. But you bring up a good point. I think the property values are going to go up. The amount of property that will be taxed is going to go up. And so you wouldn't need as much, obviously. The millage wouldn't have to be as high. And the school board's got a history of going back and correcting itself when it needs correcting, because they'll have people like you and property owners say, hey, okay, look, you did this. Now you see how much money you've got. You don't need that much. Back off a little bit. And, I still think it's a heavy lift that this gets passed, Bernie. You ask if it was a tax. Well, tax is in the very first sentence of it. So, I mean, it's not like it's trying to trick anybody. It is a tax.
Right.
I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's refuting that.
Yeah. Well, I think let's see what folks are saying. If there are any other questions, maybe before we wrap it up. I don't want to wrap up our conversation before you've had a chance to let people know or even reiterate what you think are the most important parts. Bill, I'll tell you, from here until the 20th, my goal is to inform, but I'm a political commentator, right? I'm not a straight news reporter. And I usually get my teeth kicked in, but I always will encourage people to keep more money in our own pockets and have government have less. So, from here on out, I'm going to be pushing for this, against this rather. But I want to make sure that you have a chance to let everybody know the facts that are in the referendum.
And Bernie, I have a great appreciation for what you're saying. And look, I respect you. I told you that when we chatted about doing this. I know you're a straight shooter.
Dozen years ago, even.
I'm not getting a 60 minutes treatment here. I feel sorry for Governor DeSantis. But, there was some information that was shared recently that said that our employees have gotten a raise every year forever. And that's not so. I went, when I saw that, I said, I know that's not right. There are 3 years since 2008. I've been doing this since 2008. There are 3 years when employees got 0%. In one of those years, they even had furloughs. There were 3 years when they had 1% raise. There were 4 years when it was between 1.5 and 2.5. And there have been 4 years with a 3% raise. Now, you're an economic specialist, and I know you can calculate and figure all that out, but that's really where the challenge is. They haven't caught up since the recession hit. The other thing I wanted to share with you is in that same time period. Okay, now I know this is out there far left, and I just had to do it because I knew you'd appreciate it. The average major league salary in 2008 was $2.9 million. Now it's $6.5 million. The average NBA salary, this is what blew my mind. The average NBA salary in 2008 was $4.9 million. The average now is $10 million. And I think our employees are all-stars. I mean, they rock. I tell people I don't want to be a principal to elementary school. That would drive me crazy. I don't want to drive a school bus. There are just some things that you couldn't convince me to do. But I do know that our employees work hard. They work very hard. Do we have some issues and problems? Yes. Society has issues and problems. We're not perfect, none of us. But I'm just proud of our employees and what they continue to do every day. And I just want to share this information so people can see what we're talking about. This would have a life-altering impact on so many of our employees. And that's why I'm sharing this information. I appreciate the time to talk about it.
Of course, absolutely. I think America needs more of it. People who disagree, who talk about it, and even debate about it. You're not in a position to debate because you can't advocate for this as the superintendent of schools. But I'll respond, though, for everybody that's with us about the analogy of the, say, NBA players making $10 million average salary and the Major League Baseball, I think 6.5 million average salary. Here's the biggest flaw in that comparison to me. And that is that they make their money voluntarily, right? Government taxes the money. We don't have a choice. We're not paying it because we're happy about the value we're getting. Now, I am not going to argue that the employees don't deserve a raise. But what I would say is that's government's fault, not your fault, not even the local school board's fault because of those doggone buckets that you can't move money. But geez, Louise, I mean, I just think we're comparing apples to semi-trucks on that one is all.
Well, and the reason I brought that up, Bernie, is that I think that the priorities in this country seem to get skewed a lot.
Yeah.
And I just put a lot of value on educators and those people in the classroom and those people that we get to take care of our children. And I just think the citizens need to look at this and consider this. I mean, our employees do an awful lot to take care of our children daily. And, I'm just sharing the information. I am,
Sure.
the funny thing is about those salaries, and I forget, somebody sent me that statistics, how I got it. But the funny thing and the salary comparison like that is, I had no idea those athletes made that much money. I mean, it just blows my mind. I mean, I've seen some of them play, and I'm sitting here thinking they get that much to do that. But I know that's a free market.
No, but it's
totally
a fun conversation though, Bill. In the 1970s, you'll remember, I'm a big fan of 1970s NFL and that sort of thing. Some of the biggest superstars, quarterbacks, all these superstars, they would work in the off season. They would work jobs, and you could go meet them and talk to them, and they would have commercials on TV. Some of them were car salesmen or insurance salesmen. Boy, they don't need second jobs anymore, Bill.
Johnny Unitas was my hero growing up.
Yeah. Mine was Roger Staubach, same type of player.
Roger Staubach. Yep. Well, look, Burnie, I appreciate the opportunity. And, we've always got anything that you want, any information or whatever that I can get for you. We've got all of it, and I'll be glad to share it with you. I respect you. I respect what you try to do. There are people that report, and then there are people that sensationalize. And so I like the dialogue of chatting about it like this.
I appreciate it. Superintendent Husfelt, thank you so much.
Take care.
All righty. All right. So this is the first time I've done this with you. And I'm just learning how to fly this ship, all these fancy buttons with this podcast. But I plan to do a lot more of it. I hope you'll like the page and follow it. It's also going to start going live on YouTube when I do it. I will do shows like this that are informational. I will do the watchdog shows. I'm not letting up on that. And there's so much that's going to happen here, I think, this month that you're not going to believe. And it's about time. We need accountability. And I've been focused more, as you know, in Panama City Beach. I also am very close to breaking probably the biggest story I've ever had. And that's concerning the city of Panama City. Panama City, on the other side of the bridge. It's a story you are not going to believe. It has to do with the county commission as well. So anyway, thanks for being with me tonight. This is what it looks like. And I will be back tomorrow, as a matter of fact, with John Ward, Dr. John Ward. And I'll tell you something interesting. Superintendent Husfelt, Bill and I have known each other. I gave him hell 12 years ago while I was on the radio. And for some reason, he was still nice to me and would come on and debate me. And so we have a very friendly relationship. I disagree with him most of the time on these taxes, all the time on the taxes. Tomorrow, Dr. John Ward and I publicly had a tiff and maybe don't particularly like each other. But, I think he's right on this issue. And we can set personalities aside, and we can we can explain why, in our opinion. And he's been studying this. He's the numbers guy on this. And so I've asked him to come on, and to his credit, Dr. John Ward will be on the show with me tomorrow at 6:30, and he's fired up about it. And I'm looking forward to. Thanks for being with me, and I will see you then.